Tariq Ali, when did you become an activist?
The first demonstration I went on was when I was still at school. This was in Lahore, Pakistan. I read in the paper that an African American called Jimmy Wilson in the United States was about to be executed for stealing $1. And I couldn't believe it. We checked it with the paper. They said, no, it's an accurate story. So I went round the class and said, we've got to march to the American consulate and just say this is unacceptable behavior. So we managed to rustle up about 15 or 20 of us and march down the streets, chanting, long live Jimmy Wilson, etc., to the bemusement of the people in Lahore. And at one point, a friend of mine, Salman Taseer, who later became a politician and was killed by fundamentalists, he said, we haven't got enough people and it doesn't look good. I'm going to round up some street urchins. So he said, go and do it. So he rounded up 50 or 60 street urchins and they started chanting, death to Jimmy Wilson, unless we paid them money. So money was given and then...
They really were a mob for hire.
Yeah.
You came to Britain early 60s?
Came to Britain in October 1963.
And what I find really interesting is my dad came round about the same time, and he came and started working in a factory, and a lot of those people, those Pakistanis from that generation, they felt very much like they were outsiders. They watched the stuff on the news, but they didn't really take part in it. Whereas at that same time, you were actually being part of the news. You were actually getting involved in that mainstream of protest. How did you do that?
I guess I was at university. The Vietnam War was beginning to escalate. We set up a Vietnam group. I was very actively engaged in it. And the other thing you have to understand is that about British society at that point in time, they have an ability to target individuals, to show that this is all created by one person or two people, and if you nip it in the bud, it'll stop. And essentially, it was sort of tabloid hysteria that made my name a sort of a household curse, if you like, as if, these foreign devils with extremist views are spoiling our nice, calm British students.
And when you were there, did you get a sense that these were defining times?
The 60s were defining times, without any doubt. One of the hallmarks of the 60s, that politics and culture combined, and both were incredibly radical. Many years later, in the 70s, when I taxed John Lennon with not coming on the Vietnam demonstrations, whereas Mick Jagger did, he said he was desperate to come and had to be restrained, almost by force, by Brian Epstein, who said, if you guys go on these Vietnam demos, you realize we might never play in the States again. And Lennon said, I should just have said, well, that's crap, and B, so what, and joined you. But he said I wasn't alone.
Fast forward to now, and one of the the kind of common tropes of arguments that people make about young people is they're not as radical as they used to be in the 60s. When you saw the student protests, when you see the kind of protests that are going on now to try and force Sir Philip Green to pay more tax, what are your thoughts?
I'm very pro it, actually, and I like it a lot. And I honestly despise those people from my generation who constantly go on about saying, oh, it's not like us. No, well, why should it be? The world has changed. Each generation is different from the next. People should just be pleased that the students and school students are coming out again to fight for their rights. And of course they fight for them in different conditions. When we were at university, everyone had the guarantee virtually of a job. I mean, last night I got a call. Hi, Tariq, just want to let you know that UCL is occupied again, so the student movement's alive still. I said, good, okay, we'll be in touch, bye.
Did you ever think that what's going on in the Middle East was going to happen in the way that it's happening?
No. I thought it would happen at some stage, but I never thought that we would see such a quick response to the fall of the despot in Tunisia. I mean, the speed with which that event was taken up by the Arab world as a whole just shows what conditions were like, that people underneath were stifled, feeling the need to get rid of these wretched dictatorships. And when they saw that the Tunisians, who are widely regarded in the Arab world as the softest and gentlest of pleasure seekers, when they saw the Tunisians getting rid of their dictator, the Egyptians said, hey guys, come on. What it also does is restore a sense of balance in this world. That it's not all neoliberalism, and it's not all money, 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 and it's not all celebrity politics, but here are millions of people taking their destiny in their own hands, saying, okay, kill us, losing their fear of death, and saying, in order to win all, you have to be prepared to sacrifice all. That is what they're doing in the Arab world today. And I hope some of it catches on in Europe, because it's a fantastic example to the rest of the world.
And there's a sense that nobody quite knows where it's going to go.
No one knows where it's going to go. What I notice is that unlike when a similar development took place in Latin America, South America in the 90s, the big social movements immediately produced political parties and political leaders. That hasn't happened in the Middle East as yet. But, you know, it really is the beginning of a phase. It might take 5, 6 years for that to happen. But there is no doubt that we're at a turning point. And when even the Saudi monarchy begins to tremble and says, how many billions of dollars should we spend on our people to keep them quiet? It's beyond that now. All those idiots who said, oh, all that is over, revolutions, mass upheavals, you know, you people are dinosaurs on the wrong side of history, we've made our peace because that's the only way we've made our peace with the system, they're looking a bit stupid now.
But do you think it's a condition of radicals to be living in a state of perpetual disillusionment?
I don't think so, you know. I mean, I think it's just hoping against hope that some politician is produced who'll do something. You know, positive. It happens in South America. Hopefully it's going to happen in the Arab world now. I mean, why should Europe and the United States be left out of it? I mean, you look at politics. In this country, you essentially have a trilateral consensus. You know, no basic fundamental differences on social, economic, foreign policy.
And if there was proportional representation, if there was AV, would that encourage a more honest, a more democratically electable kind of?
Well, it might. I prefer AV to first past the post. I mean, ideally, I would like a proportional representation system on the German model, which functions where you have both constituency seats and top-ups after the elections, after the votes have been counted. And I think that would open up the system a bit more, were that to happen here. And the argument which you often hear politicians use who don't want to lose their monopoly, oh, but that means the fascists would have seats in parliament, to which my reply is, well, then deal with them. If people are going to elect the BNP or whatever, let them be, you deal with them.
Do you think you're more radical now than you were 40 years ago?
I think I'm roughly about the same, really. I mean, times have changed. And I never had much time for people who either left politics and moved into the academy, and once they moved into the academy, moved gradually to the right, leave alone those who just became outright renegades. And one day they were writing revolutions are wonderful, and a few years later they were neocons defending Bush. And then when Bush was defeated, immediately changing sides to support Obama.
Would you rather be 18 in 1961 or in 2011?
I was very happy being 18 when I was 18, and I'm very happy being in my 60s in 2011. You know, it sort of rejuvenates you. When history is being made, people are out on the streets again, governments are being changed, dictators are being toppled, students in Europe and workers are beginning to fight for their rights again. It's like when we were young, coming out on Vietnam demonstrations, and we used to get a real frisson when people would say, there are the veterans from the Spanish Civil War of 1936. And, you know, this band of oldies would come saying, Spanish Civil War veterans against the war. And I feel a bit like that now.